Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships and a replay I actually myself requested to cover. This is MyTeamIsWorse and we're going to see him having a totally epic Minotaur game. This is not a cruiser or even just a line of cruisers that are really for the faint of heart. The British light cruiser line are probably one of the higher skill cap lines in the game just because they are so damn squishy. They have a lot of potential with the smoke and the, especially when you get to tier 10, the extremely rapid rate of fire, but they can also die very, very, very quickly indeed, and so it requires a bit of luck, but more importantly it requires paying total attention to everything that might possibly shoot you at all times, pretty much. Because all it takes is one unexpected salvo from a direction you weren't expecting, and bang, 3/4 of your health is gone, or worse. Of course, there is the option with the Minotaur to forego smoke entirely and have radar, and I'm sure you've seen radar Minotaur meme videos out and about on YouTube. That's the even higher risk way to play it. But in terms of usability, I mean, certainly radar Minotaur takes people by surprise, but in terms of usability and staying alive, I think smoke Minotaur is probably the I won't say superior choice, that's the wrong phrase, but definitely the safer choice. There is a radar in this division though. I mean, he's divisioned up with another Minotaur, who I presume is also a smoke Minotaur. In fact, yes, they will be, because we see them using smoke later on. But this Smerland here, Billy, is that? It's something Billy, has got a radar themselves, and that's a ship you don't see around that often, so I think sometimes that can be a nasty little surprise for people when they run into one of those and don't realise it has radar. What it does lack, however, is the defensive AA of the Holland, but it's still got pretty good AA itself, all things considered. Anyway, it just doesn't have that extra kick that the defense can give it. So between himself and his allied Minotaur, they have already put some hurt onto that Grosser first. There was a bit of concern there maybe when there was those incoming shots, but fortunately nothing actually really connected from the GK, although that Hindi managed to do a little bit of damage. That's one of the downsides of having such a rapid rate of fire, is it makes it exceptionally easy for people to be able to place you when you're firing in smoke. However, the Hindi's days are very nearly numbered. They ran smack bang into some Smerland torps there, and it wasn't enough to kill them, but it was enough to make them wounded enough to then just pummel to death with the British semi-armour piercing. Although it's not, I mean, I say that, it is semi-armour piercing, it's just not the semi-armour piercing that you found on the Italians, which maybe I shouldn't even call it SAP, because that's just going to confuse people. So, they're in a good spot right now, as it turns out. This is an interesting cap overall. I mean, it's not usually what you would think of as being a linchpin position on this map. But other than directly north and south and a bit through that gap in the islands to the west there, this is otherwise an enclosed position. I think the only other spot on the map that's anything like as enclosed is the 9-10 line with the islands there. But of course that is way off to the side of the map, whereas this is pretty much smack bang in the middle of the map, and therefore a position that actually matters. And it's not often you see somebody playing around in this position as aggressively, certainly not in a cruiser. This is usually the preserve of bold destroyer players, but here we're seeing a very bold Minotaur player, and well, this could go very, very wrong. But here's where some of that luck is going to come in, because the North Carolina, although he's slowed down, he knows there's those torps incoming. He knows, like, he's been paying attention enough to see my team. It's going to be weird saying shorting his name to that, but anyway, my team is better, or my team is worse rather. The complete opposite. Yeah, they were paying attention enough to slow down, but didn't have their guns turned anywhere close. And he didn't really take a lot of damage from that GK. There were also other things spotting him, or targeting him rather, as well. But yeah, he really did get away with that in maybe a way that possibly he shouldn't have. But he's going to try now something even riskier, and I think he's looking at the position of the rest of his team, who are being pushed away from the B cap, and he's seen this North Carolina, who is more or less isolated. I mean, there's that, what is that, an Iowa to the north, but they can't really fire at him right now because of the islands between him and them, and so that just leaves him and the North Carolina. And so he's going to rush this North Carolina with his very nasty torpedoes, but he's going to lose a heck of a lot of health in the process. And even though he was angled rather sharply there, that was still a really big hit. And it's the super heal that the light cruisers, that the Minotaur especially gets access to, that saved his bacon there. He'd have been on like a quarter or less of his hit points. Well, probably a bit more than that with a regular heal still, but he would have lost an awful lot of health. As it is, he's still down to about, I mean, that looks less than 60%. Is that about 60% health? And, one good battleship salvo could finish him if there are multiple citadels involved, but he's going to try it again. And he didn't necessarily know up until the moment where he saw the smoke whether it was going to be a battleship here or a destroyer, but as it turns out, it is a destroyer. It's a Fletcher, and it's very bad news for the Fletcher because these guns melt destroyers, or these shells melt destroyers rather. So that's his third kill. We're up to nearly 150k damage. The enemy team is now pushing in force through the decap, and there's really only the Hindenburg and Chuck Norris there in the other Minotaur who are doing their best to try and slow them down a bit. And in fact, now the Hindy's down, it's just the other Minotaur. And I think they've smoked up as well at this point because nobody is spotting anything apart from the Iowa, who just took a pot shot at my team. It just feels weird saying it in an abbreviated way, but then saying the non-abbreviated way is also incredibly clunky feeling. I don't know. So, yeah, this is not looking great overall. They've got 2 battleships left south of A. His own surviving destroyer teammate, squad mate even, the Smurland, is coming back over, I think, to try and assist. And between him and Chuck Norris in the other Minotaur, they've just knackered that Worcester good and proper. And so that's the radar threat out of the way. And he does still have 2 smokes left, so that increases the utility of those smokes rather considerably. But as he comes out of that smoke to see what's what, reposition, well, there's another destroyer. And that time it was a Marceau. And that's another kill, so that's quite nice. They were very low health. That one was a bit more of a kill secure, but you can't really say he hasn't been doing the damage or taking chances to do damage. He's not exactly been playing the most super safe game in a Minotaur ever, especially like even charging down a lower tier battleship as with the North Carolina. And that was a move born out of, well, we've got to take care of this, and I know I'm going to take a hit and it might be really nasty, but I'm going to do it anyway. And we're maybe about to see the same thing. It looks like he might be going to push into this cap. We know he has tagged whatever battleship or ship that is that was pushing C with a torp, and presumably it was that Izumo, and gotten a flooding on them, but he might not really get a good chance to try and get more torps into them and pop another flooding that would stick, which is maybe what he was thinking. So instead he turns his attention to the low health Kutuzov on the other side, which is almost the last ship left on that flank. They do have a Fletcher there as well somewhere. And although the arcs are a bit nasty, and although of course this does reveal him, and takes another hit from that Iowa, who's still kind of just chilling behind that cap. I mean, they're not in a position to get shot by either of the one surviving battleship now, so Yeah, that's awkward and a bit problematic. The Iowa knows that they can pretty much just sit there and not have to take any big hits, even though they are really unangled at the moment. So, time for another smoke, and while he's spotted, pump out the shells. He's now relying on Billy and the Smurland for spotting here. Obviously, he can't do anything about the Izumo that's just capped, not right away. But as long as the Iowa's still spotted, he can keep pumping out those shells and hopefully take them down before they get close enough to spot him, which, you know, it's maybe a bit chancy, but with the dodging of torps there and the Iowa clearly chickening out in terms of trying to push a Minotaur smoke, which will invariably see angry torpedoes coming your way, although his own torps had already been put out, not that the Iowa could have known that. Yeah, instead he basically, you know, gave up any chance he had of repositioning effectively or running away or whatever. If he'd accelerated forwards into cover versus the position that MyTeamIsWorse was in, then he might have made it out there alive, but instead he kind of panicked a bit, I think, when the angry smoke clouds started trying to melt his hit points, and that basically then sealed his fate. So they're down to now 4 enemy ships. He is up to 7 kills. I did tell you this game was going to be epic. We're not done yet. We are absolutely not done yet. Now the Izumo is pulling into view, and the enemy Vanguard's there as well, so he's getting just a little bit of extra use out of the smoke screen. And it might even not be the smoke screen, actually. He backed out a bit far there, so he's having maybe a use out of the islands to protect him there instead. Now, ordinarily, Vanguard, not a hugely threatening ship in terms of its main battery firepower, but, you know, it's a Minotaur, doesn't have a lot of armour, so he's already taken 2 good smacks. Can he take another good one? I think it really kind of comes down to RNG at this point. Now, as it turned out, it was the torpedo that delivered the coup de grace there, so that's yet another kill. That's 8 kills, 2/3 of the enemy team, and granted 1 or 2 of them have been maybe kill secures, but 288k damage, you know, you can't really argue with that. And now all that's left is the Vanguard, the GK that is way down south and essentially out of the fight, and the Fletcher, who is an unknown quantity. The Fletcher might still be tangling or trying to set up for a good attack on our surviving North Carolina. So basically, MyTeamIsWorse just decides to go for it, and again, a bit of a risky move. And he really does just need to try and beat the reload of the Vanguard. And I presume there was some coordination going on with Billy there, because Billy had opened fire, the Vanguard had fired some shots at them, and that gave MyTeamIsWorse the space to move up, or at least the time that the 20-odd, if not full 30 seconds, depending on whether they had adrenaline rush or not, to actually make those risky drops, because this doesn't have the best torpedo drop angles, as you've seen. The mystery of where the Fletcher is, by the way, finally solved. We know they're on the A cap now, and I don't know what they've been doing for all this time, to be honest. They might have just been making unsuccessful drops on the North Carolina. Maybe they took care of the Jean Bar, perhaps. You can see them actually having smoked up and firing at the North Carolina. And at this stage, I mean, it's still quite close on points. Having a cap between them could make a difference. We're also down to less now than 5 minutes, but well, us knowing where the MyTeamIsWorse knowing us, the royal us, knowing where this Fletcher is a huge boon. And although potentially Billy in the Smurland could have come with him to try and tackle this Fletcher, instead he's actually gone to take what is probably the safer, more sensible course of action in that he's gone for the decap. The Fletcher, by the way, obviously very eager to keep doing damage. They backed out the smoke to try and keep range on the North Carolina. We also now are finally in range of Chuck Norris, who's been way, pushed way at the back there. Doesn't have a lot of health, clearly, and is doing what they can as well. They've clearly had an active game as well in terms of taking damage, dodging damage, and it looks like their luck might be about to run out. The GK is firing at them. Now they're still alive, taking damage, but given that the GK is concentrating on them, that leaves... yep, there they go. They actually got taken out by secondaries. That leaves MyTeamIsWorse a little window to move up to try and deal with this Fletcher. And it was spotted for a bit there as a result of obviously firing and being in the detection range of both these ships. And there we go. There was some incoming fire. He just managed to dodge. I don't know if that was kind of a slight blind fire from the GK. But yeah, there we go. More Fletcher torps incoming. So obviously this was a very timely use of the Hydro. And as they continued to fire, tried to get shots off at the North Carolina, which was a bit cheeky and a bit greedy, and I think the wrong move from that Fletcher. They then actually get taken out by his guns at the very last moment. So that was the 10th and final kill. This was a double Kraken game. This was nuts. 345,000 damage done. And it almost goes without saying that he got the Confederate and high caliber as well as a dreadnought in that. Sometimes you just got to do everything yourself. Except that's not quite fair. His division mates in particular did a hell of a lot there as well, even though they obviously came out of it with not a ridiculous amount of kills. It just ended up being him hoovering up all those kills. But yeah, that was one hell of a result. I don't know if I've ever seen a Minotaur game quite that hard fought. And certainly seeing so much action around that one cap circle in the middle of the map in a squashy cruiser, that's incredibly unusual. And to some extent, the enemy team let it happen, but, you know, his own team let it happen as well. So I don't know, you know, do we give out more blame than praise, or more praise than blame for that one? But either way, just keeping your head and making what you know are risky plays, but knowing that you have to do it anyway if you're to have a chance of coming through and being the winner. I mean, his hands must have been shaking after that one. That was just incredible. You know, best game I have seen so far this year, definitely, without a doubt. And doing it in as squashy a ship as the Minotaur as well, you know. No mean feat, definitely no mean feat. So, hopefully you have all enjoyed that replay as much as I did, because that was just incredible. And if you did, you can do all the usual things underneath the video. And of course, as always, stay tuned for more.